And the headlines: political deadlock continues in Korea, and it's putting the main opposition party's leadership in a tough position as it rules out the possibility of renegotiating a bill the bereaved families of the April ferry disaster are rejecting. U.S. President Barack Obama vows no let-up in air attacks on Iraqi militants after the beheading of a U.S. journalist. And a tough road ahead for the Korean economy. A slew of projections point to slow growth for many major economies on top of geopolitical tensions that could potentially hurt the global economy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us tonight. Korea's political standoff continues as bereaved families of the victims of April ferry disaster are rejecting the Sewol-ho bill, long negotiated and agreed on by rival parties. The families were not happy with the selection process of panel members in this probe that would get to the bottom of the ferry sinking. And now, the main opposition party's interim chief is finding herself in a sticky position. Myung-kil tells us more.
The acting chair, Park of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, failed to persuade fellow party members and relatives of the Sewol-ho ferry victims to accept the compromised ferry bill that was produced with the ruling Saenuri Party on Tuesday. The interim chief has not been able to win the backing of her own party, and some lawmakers have even distanced themselves after news broke that the families were dissatisfied with the agreement. The ruling party has kept a firm stance, saying further negotiations are out of question, and the opposition party's hardliners have sided with the victims' families who oppose the bill, saying it lacks investigative and prosecutorial powers. The interim chief Park, also in line with the ruling party, made it clear on Wednesday that renegotiations are not an option. Lawmakers from within the main opposition are divided on how to resolve the current crisis. The acting chair faces the prospect of intense backlash from within her own party, and it is feared that the opposition could be hurt more if the party fails to win any concessions from both the ruling party and family members of the ferry accident victims. Left with no choice, interim leader Park has asked President Park to meet one of the victims' fathers, who has been staging a hunger strike for over a month to help break the deadlock. However, the presidential office has distanced itself from the bill, saying the special law on the Sewol-ho ferry incident is a matter that needs bipartisan agreement within parliament and is not an issue President Park can help resolve. Myung-kil, ARIRANG News.
President Park has emphasized the need for the South Korean and the U.S. allies to prepare for any type of security threat or natural disaster. This during her visit today to a site of this ongoing Seoul-Washington joint military exercise. Some 80,000 South Korean and U.S. troops are participating in this year's Ulchi Freedom Guardian drills. The South says they're strictly defensive in nature, while North Korea considers it a war game. She also visited the Capital Defense Command in Seoul today, a first for a South Korean president in 23 years. The U.S. Navy has unveiled plans to expand its number of ships deployed in the Asian region over the next 5 years. The so-called navigation plan calls for an expansion of the American fleet in the Asia-Pacific from 50 to 65 ships by 2019, in line with the U.S. pivot to Asia. Washington also plans to increase its presence in the Middle East from 30 to 40 ships over the same period. This document covers fiscal years 2015 through 2019 and serves as a guide to the top Navy officers' budget priorities. The U.S. Treasurys point man on North Korea sanctions is currently in Korea for talks with senior diplomats of South Korea. Officials say David Cohen and Seoul's top nuclear envoy Hwang Jun-guk and Lee Kyung-soo, the deputy minister for political affairs, reviewed the current status of economic sanctions against Pyongyang imposed by the international community and discussed ways to work with countries like China on this issue. Cohen is also also said to have requested Seoul's cooperation in sanctions against Russia, citing the Ukraine crisis and the recent downing of a Malaysian passenger jet.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Chae-ri for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to... Market indicators coming out of different parts of the world seem to be pointing in the one direction, which is a global economic downturn. Geopolitical concerns in a variety of hotspots are adding to these apprehensions, making it difficult for this export-driven Korean economy to gain much momentum. Our Song Ji-sun reports.
Latest reports by the Korean government and economic research institutes reveal that most of the world's largest economies are showing significant downside risks that could drag on Korean and emerging economies as well. The Eurozone, which accounts for 17% of the global economy, failed to grow at all in the second quarter from the first quarter. The gain in consumer prices in the Eurozone also marked the lowest level in nearly 5 years, at a mere 0.4%. Both indicators show a typical double-dip phenomenon, meaning the European economy showed weak signs of recovery, then fell back to a slump. Japan's stagnant economy is expected to remain in the doldrums for another few years, with exports not rebounding enough to bolster its economy and domestic spending continuing to shrink. Japan's economy contracted 6.8% in real terms in the second quarter, the lowest level seen since the devastating earthquake and tsunami 3 years ago. Citing officials, Bloomberg reported that Japan's central bank could slash its 2014 growth outlook to less than 1%, with many private economists predicting growth rate of less than 0.5%. The Japanese central bank has already revised down its growth forecast for this year 3 times. The U.S. is the only bright spot, with its GDP logging a 4% growth in the second quarter. But its momentum can largely be affected by the slowing demand from the Eurozone and a widely expected decision by the U.S. Federal Reserve to raise its benchmark interest rate in the coming month. Crises in Ukraine, Iraq, and Gaza also have the potential to derail the global economic recovery. That could spell a tough road ahead for the Korean economy, which relies heavily on exports. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
July was a good month for Korea's tourism industry, with 1.3 million foreign tourists visiting this country. That's up more than 12% on year, according to the Korea Tourism Organization. The biggest rise was seen in Chinese visitors, whose numbers grew 22%, thanks in part to the growing popularity of Korean television programs there. More Russian tourists also made the trip to Korea, taking advantage of a new visa waiver. The total of Japanese visitors went the other direction, though, dropping 17%. The number of people suffering from Alzheimer's disease in Korea is expected to skyrocket in the coming decades, and so are the costs for treating it. A National Assembly Budget Office report says the number of people 65 or older who have the disease will jump from 1% of the total population in 2012 to nearly 6% in 2050. Then the cost for treating all those people in 2050 will jump to $42 billion, an estimated 1.5% of the country's GDP. Mathematics can be a scary subject for some, including myself, actually. It was once considered a reserve of the academic world, but Korean researchers are trying to let the future generations know that math theorems are also being applied in everyday gadgets and devices. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The application of math theorems provides an important foundation for the advancement of modern technology. 3D printers, one of the most promising inventions of the 21st century, are based on a calculus theory known as Fubini's theorem. Introduced by Guido Fubini in the early 20th century, it states that in order to materialize an object with n-level dimensions, one can do so by piling up the matter of n-1 dimensions.
If it wasn't for Fubini's theorem, it would not have been possible to intricately pile layer upon layer to produce a three-dimensional object. The rudimentary alternative is to take a large object and sharpen it, but this method cannot produce the sophisticated designs like those made by 3D printers.
Due to its growing importance, Korea has increasingly tried to find ways to nourish local mathematicians, and has been making significant progress in the field over the past 30 years. Korea ranked first in the International Mathematical Olympiads in 2012 and has maintained a top 7 ranking since. A number of math dissertations from Korea have been published in academic journals overseas, putting it at 11th in the world. However, Park Kyung-ju, professor at Pohang University of Science and Technology, says there's still a long way to go in terms of promoting the quality of research. He's emphasizing the need to create a conducive environment for local mathematicians.
So they tend to do research whose results are kind of predictable, or they know for sure that they can solve. Instead of actually challenging the problems that can actually make impacts. Because the problem is the whole research infrastructure, including grants opportunities, promotes that mindset.
The winners of this year's Fields Medals, which are among the most prestigious awards in mathematics, underscore the importance of quality education in nurturing young mathematicians so that they can experience and appreciate the beauty of the subject and stay the course. Kim Jeon, ARIRANG News.
Language and cultural barriers are just a couple of factors that made some Asians hesitant to leave their own countries and move to another Asian country for work and perhaps a better life. But that's apparently changing. Our Kim Hyun-bin explains.
The number of people moving from one Asian country to another has risen dramatically over the last 10 years. According to the UN 2013 International Migration Report, released on Wednesday, roughly 20 million Asians migrated within the continent last year. Many are leaving their homelands in search of work, others because of marriage. As countries in Northeast Asia, like Korea and Japan, suffer from the effect of low birth rates, a labor gap has emerged. It's being filled more and more by cheap labor from South Asia and Southeast Asia. Some 2 million Southeast Asians and South Asians moved to Northeast Asia last year for work or international marriage last year. That's nearly double the total from 2000. And looking at Vietnam alone, over 17,000 Vietnamese migrated to Korea in 2000. By 2013, the figure has soared to 120,000. While Northeast Asia has seen an influx of immigrants, its numbers pale in comparison to West Asia. Some 13.5 million people migrated from South Asia to the west of the continent last year. They're making the move for similar reasons. Middle Eastern countries may be rich in oil, but they also have relatively small populations, requiring them to look outside their borders for hard labor. That's opened the employment door for people from India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, who have seized the opportunity. The number of Southeast Asians moving to the Middle East for work has also risen, with the number last year falling about 2.8 million. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Israel has stepped up its bombardment of the Gaza Strip, killing at least 15 Palestinians, including 4 children, according to emergency services there. Paul E. is joining us for more. Paul, this latest attack comes as the bloody conflict in the territory enters its 45th day. Is there any hope for a diplomatic solution at this point?
Well, peace talks in Cairo have completely broken down, with a Palestinian delegation ordered to return home, triggering both sides to pick off where they left off before the truce began. Cross-border rocket fire and airstrikes have resumed in full force. This as the UN Security Council called on Israel and the Palestinians to return to the negotiating table. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
The airstrikes and rocket attacks between Israel and Hamas resumed Wednesday as efforts to come up with an extended ceasefire broke down. The Israeli military said it carried out 92 airstrikes in response to 137 rockets shot into its airspace since the truce talks broke down, which both sides blame on each other. Hamas says an Israeli airstrike on a house in Gaza killed 3 of its leaders, including the wife and infant son of Hamas military commander Mohammed Deif, who survived the attack. In a televised statement, Hamas military wing warned of further rocket attacks on Israel, including its main international airport. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to continue his campaign against Gaza militants with all means and as is needed.
Only a guarantee of the calm and safety of Israeli citizens will bring an end to this operation, and therefore I will continue to operate with firmness and insistence. Operation Protective Edge is not finished, not for a minute. We're talking about a lengthy campaign.
Egypt expressed regret over the end of truce, adding that it will continue to try to secure a long-lasting one. The UN Security Council also voiced concerns over the resumption of fighting, calling on the parties to return to the negotiating table. The conflict, which broke out in early July, has left at least 2,100 people dead. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And staying in the Middle East, Paul, the video of the brutal beheading of American journalist James Foley by Islamic militants continues to spark international outrage, of course. And now it looks like there was a secret operation launched to rescue him and others kidnapped by these militants.
That's right. The Pentagon has revealed that U.S. Special Forces tried but failed to free American hostages in Syria earlier this year, and that included Foley. President Barack Obama has condemned the alleged beheading of the American journalist, saying that the U.S. will continue to fight against the militant group. Our Connie Lee reports.
A spokesperson for the Pentagon has revealed that the United States attempted a rescue operation in Syria earlier this summer, not only to free U.S. journalist James Foley, but also other American hostages being held in Syria by Islamic State militants. It was a secret, major rescue operation launched by U.S. Special Forces against the Islamic State. The Pentagon statement on Wednesday said the operation involved air and ground components, but did not succeed because the hostages were not present at the targeted location. This new information came as the U.S. launched a wave of new airstrikes against Islamic State targets in Iraq. On the same day, President Barack Obama, in a televised statement, said the U.S. will be relentless in the fight against the militant group following the brutal murder of Mr. Foley. President Obama, who said he was heartbroken over the incident, said the U.S. will do what's necessary to see that justice is done. He also compared the militant group to cancer, whose spread must be stopped. The president's message came less than a day after the militants released a video of the American journalist being beheaded. The Islamic State is believed to be holding several American hostages, including journalist Steven Sotloff. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And closer to home and turning to Japan, where national search and rescue operations are in full swing a day after a massive landslide there was triggered by torrential rains. What's the latest on the rescue efforts?
Well, thousands of police, military, and rescue personnel are still searching through the remains of the mountain neighborhood near the city of Hiroshima as of Thursday evening. At least 39 people are feared dead from the disaster that buried scores of homes in rock and mud. Authorities say they are desperately trying to find the 7 people who remain unaccounted for, including a father and his 3-year-old son. Meanwhile, Seoul's foreign ministry has confirmed that 2 Koreans who live nearby had been swept away in the landslide. One was killed while the other was seriously injured.
Regarding this disaster, our government expresses deep sympathies to the Japanese government and its people for the damage of human lives and properties.
Japan's weather agency said 240 millimeters of rain fell, about a month's worth, in the 24 hours leading up to Wednesday morning. Weather officials warn more rain could be on the way that could trigger even more landslides.
And finally, moving on to Russia, where authorities are cracking down on fast food restaurants there in an apparent move to push back against the Western sanctions. And it looks like McDonald's has been the first to fall in this international food fight.
Well, it's a targeted strike to say the least. Russia's federal consumer watchdog ordered 4 McDonald's locations in Moscow to temporarily shut down on Thursday for what they say are sanitary violations. The government agency said the order was part of nationwide inspections of McDonald's restaurants over food safety concerns. Critics say the Golden Arches have become the latest victim of the worsening relations between Russia and the West, with many customers divided over the closures.
The West occasionally kick us with different sanctions. Why can we not do something in return? Moreover, McDonald's is such a symbol of everything Western. I think it is a good symbolic step that shows that we have some teeth.
Among the 4 eateries that were closed down was a historic one in Pushkin Square. It opened just before the fall of the Soviet Union, and according to the company, is the most frequented McDonald's in the world. Charity?
Oh, the most frequented McDonald's in Russia. That's interesting. And anyways, thank you very much, Paul, for those stories, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours. If you haven't heard about this ice bucket challenge, it means that you haven't been online lately. Videos of celebrities and even world leaders tipping ice-cold water over themselves are going viral on the internet, and the challenge has made its way to Korea as well. Our Kwon So-wa with more.
Charity can be so much fun. The ice bucket challenge is going viral around the world. All you have to do is dump a bucket of ice water over your head or let others do it for you within 24 hours after being nominated, or donate $100 to the ALS Association. The association helps people suffering from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis or Lou Gehrig's disease. Once you have been nominated and drenched yourself, it's your turn to choose 3 other people. And it's the more fun when the most well-known people in the world take the challenge.
To you all who challenged me, I do not think it's presidential for me to be splashed with ice water, so I'm simply going to write you a check.
Or not.
Yesterday was Bill's birthday, and my gift to Bill is a bucket of cold water.
Now I nominate Ellen, Barack Obama.
The internet is full of clips of people like Tom Cruise, Lady Gaga, and others not only showing their down-to-earth side, but tipping ice-cold water over themselves and donating to a great cause. The challenge has also made its way to Korea. Actor Jo In-sung grabbed the headlines when he nominated a baseball player of his same name. Former pro basketball player Park Seung-il, who has been battling with Lou Gehrig's disease, took the challenge in his own way with snow spray, which touched many people. Although there is some criticism that the challenge makes light of such a serious illness, it has fulfilled its main purpose of raising awareness and tens of millions of dollars. According to the ALS Association, donations have rocketed to $31.5 million in less than a month, compared to the under $2 million raised over the same period last year. Kwon So-wa, ARIRANG News.
Earlier in the program, we talked about lots of rain in Japan, but people in Korea also had to break out their rain gear over the past few days or so with an unexpected round of heavy downpours here in Korea. Our Connie Kim has a damage report.
Monsoon season is officially over, but you wouldn't know it by looking outside over the past few days. Heavy rain pelted the central region on Thursday morning, prompting the Korea Meteorological Administration to issue its first heavy raining warning of the summer for the capital Seoul. An average of 45 millimeters fell in the morning alone, which is more precipitation than was recorded during the entire dry monsoon period in mid-July. And it's not quite over. By the time Friday is up, the central region is expected to receive up to 120 millimeters of rain. Other parts of the peninsula have not been spared. Further south, several landslides and damages to farms were reported in Chungcheongnam-do province, and traffic was restricted in the city of Daegu due to flooding. The Weather Administration attributes the torrential rain to cold air from the north colliding with hot, humid air from the south, which has caused instability in the atmosphere. The nationwide rain is expected to stop Friday afternoon, but another round of precipitation is expected starting from Sunday. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And of course, for more on weather, we connect live to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, earlier today, the first heavy rainfall alert of the season was issued for Seoul, but it looks like conditions are starting to clear up a little.
That's right. It has stopped raining in most regions. However, showers accompanied by strong winds and thunder continue to stick around in Gangwon-do province. More rainfall is in store overnight. We're looking at up to 20 millimeters for most parts of the country, so make sure to keep that umbrella handy. This system will clear up by tomorrow evening, and overall, it is shaping up to be a cloudy Friday. Other than that, sunnier conditions are in store for the rest of the week. On to Friday's readings. Seoul, Gwangju, and Busan reach 29, 27, and 29, while Daegu hits 31. As for other places, Daejeon and Jeju make it to the high 20s, while Dokdo hits 24. That'll do it for now, but I'll be back with more updates after 10. See you then.
Thanks, Bo-kyung, and that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.